Hello, good morning, good evening, good afternoon, and welcome to episode 71 of the Productive Wellbeing Show. And you are joining me today for third of our 5 lockdown business and life lesson conversations with previous guests from the show. And as I've said on the last 2 shows, we've been in contact with all the people, and we're bringing you the people who are sort of available and open and ready and here for the conversations about what's been going on for them right now. And so today, I'm so grateful that Marilyn Devonish, who is the founder of TranceFormations, has been able to spend some time with us today. And she's going to share with us sort of what has happened, because let's take our minds back. If you've not been watching any of the shows and you're kind of joining us right now, let's take our minds back to 17 weeks ago when something called lockdown was being talked about. And the coronavirus was something that also none of us had really heard about, was starting to sweep the world. And so we started the show and having conversations around productivity and wellness. So welcome to the show today, Marilyn. Thanks for joining us.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. It's really good to be back, and I cannot believe it's been 17 weeks already. Wow.
I know. And that we're on episode 71 as well, which is even more crazy. So just before we sort of dive into lessons, let's have a little bit about you, about Marilyn, because it's just you and I today. So we've got the time, we've got the opportunity. And as people are joining, please let us know, say hi. I can see some of you coming online. If you watch this on the replay, also let us know where you're joining from on the replay. And any questions that you've got as well, put the questions into the box. So Marilyn, just tell us a little bit about you in a nutshell. What do you do and who do you do it for?
Well, I'm laughing now because I'm thinking about the conversation we've just had. I'm like, Abigail, that is a great quote. I might have to use that one where you're talking about the Russian doll effect and that I'm the gift that keeps on giving, because there are so many things that sit under that umbrella. And so Abigail was saying, you know, what are the things I'm most passionate about? I said, look, number 1, it's teaching and training. Number 2, if I were talking about it in terms of modalities, there are 2 favorite modalities, HUNA and photo reading. But essentially, in terms of what I do and why I do it, nowadays, I have to say the neuro success coach, and I'm a multidisciplinary therapist as well, because I do about 20 different modalities. I started with NLP and hypnosis and timeline therapy, and it's gone from there. In the context of which I'm here today, I've also been a flexible working implementation consultant since 2003. That means going into organizations to design and develop and implement smart, remote and flexible working strategy and policy. And that's everything from working with ergonomic designers and builders and architects to rip down spaces and redesign space for flexible and remote working, right through to the psychological side and the psychology of how do you actually work effectively and productively from home. So I've been a management consultant, also a corporate trainer for the last 17 years. And for me, it's a mix and a blend of all of those things, where I'm mixing and blending the kind of, I guess you might call the spiritual coaching therapy side with the consultancy, corporate training and management training side. And when I first started, I specialized in central and local governments, so places like Treasury Department, ODPM, Office of Deputy Prime Minister, HM Treasury, that's, you know, that sort of thing, and anything to do with central and local government, Department for Transport. So very different worlds that I reside in. However, the really lovely thing of having been a coach and therapist for the past 20 years is that they all blend really well. So if I had to choose a word, for me, it's about transformation. How do you transform your mind? How do you transform your thinking? And how do you transform your productivity and the way that you kind of flow with your business, in a nutshell?
Amazing. So Marilyn is, I was saying this to her earlier, to me, she's like the Russian doll, the gift that keeps on giving, because the more you get to know her, the more you find out about the skills and modalities and tips and tricks and everything that she has and she knows. So she came onto the show to talk about remote working previously. That episode is now live on our YouTube channel. So I would highly recommend that you check that one out, because also Marilyn is neuroscientifically trained. Sorry, can't remember. Is it a PhD that you've got in neuroscience?
I haven't got a PhD in that yet, but you never know. That would be lovely.
So in that show, she talks about the neuroscience of what's going on and what our brains are experiencing. So that is a really great show to go back to kind of get the story before this story and conversation now. But if you're with us now, then today we're going to really be talking about what Marilyn's learnt over the last 17 weeks. And she's going to give you a top tip as well. So Marilyn, your first biggest lesson during the corona pandemic?
I think one of the things that I would say is that people will catch up and humans are hugely adaptable. I'm going to put that into context. I did a series of interviews.
And make sure you're taking notes.
I've done a lot of interviews about remote working, smart working, flexible working. And when this all kicked off, I did a series of interviews with BBC Radio 5 Live, one on the 6th of March, one on the 13th of March. I said during both of those interviews that I predict, and this is where before we'd even really gone into lockdown, it was all just, we were starting to talk about it and it was becoming more of a reality. But I said, I predict that there will be a seismic shift. Those were the words that I used. I predict there'll be a seismic shift in the way that people work. And after going through the curve that I described, many will come out the other end going, actually, this working from home, this working from remotely, they'll go from resistance to, I actually like this. And I also said, I suspect the challenge for organizations will be how to get people back into the workplace, having then experienced and found a sense of balance and flow. So what this really shows me is how quickly as human beings we can adapt, we can change. And I think the word that everyone's using now is pivot, but that's one of the big things. And when you kind of realize how much the world has changed in those 17 weeks, and actually the 17 now sounds quite significant. I've been having this conversation with organizations, CEOs, frontline teams, managers, team leaders for 17 years.
Wow.
And the biggest
17 weeks is like a tip of the iceberg.
It's all changed. Everything, we're online. I mean, I know there's, the joke used to be in business, death by PowerPoint. I think now it's by Zoom because people are zoomed out a lot as well. But it just shows me how quickly things can change in rapid amount of time. So that's one of the big things, that just observing how the world has shifted, how the world of work has shifted, and how that conversation is now completely different. So that will be, I think, one of the big first thing in terms of observations and learnings. The second,
and would you say that then that has sort of had an impact on your business and how you do your business, and the conversations that you're having with clients and potential clients?
One of the things that I anticipate is going to get a lot easier, because I've been coaching and training and offering therapy online since 2005, where people were saying back then, oh, it's not possible to do this, that, and the other online. I'm like, really? So I've been doing that for 15 years. What I think is going to happen, and I've been running full half-day, 1 day, 2 day, 3 day video webinar workshops since 2016, and I was waiting for the technology to catch up so that it was robust enough to do it. So I think one of the things that's going to happen now, it's going to be easier for people to get their head around that idea. It's going to be easier for them to go, oh, actually, I've seen in practice now this works. So my first job is no longer going to be to convince people that it's possible to do all of this online, because now they've already had that experience. So it's going to change the dynamic, I think, of just how open people are to what seem to be new, innovative ideas.
And is it changing your conversations with people, or are you finding that they're still sort of in a bit of a tailspin, or more now towards the end of the 17 weeks, you're starting to get them coming to the table for a conversation, where at the beginning it was sort of fighting every fire?
Yeah, people didn't have the capacity for this type of conversation back then, because you were literally firefighting. What are you going to do? You're locked out of your building. Your staff are all over the place. If you're a face-to-face contact business, well, all of your people are gone. So it's a bit like stress and trauma. Hindsight is a beautiful, wonderful thing. When somebody's out of the fog and they're no longer in the eye of the storm, you're full of wisdom and coulda, what I call the coulda, shoulda, would-ofs. When you're in it, the best way I can put this, when I was doing my degree, I did a business studies degree and a postgraduate marketing diploma with the Chartered Institute of Marketing. My economics teacher, he had this phrase and this saying, and I didn't understand it. And every time he said it, which was pretty much every lecture, me and my 3 friends in the back row would roll our eyes and go, oh, here he goes again. And his saying was, you can't see the wood for the trees. I had no idea what that meant. Then when I got into personal development, like, oh, I totally get it now. When you're that close to the tree, you have no idea what it is. If somebody says, what's that? You'd be like, I don't know. I can't see it. So you can't see the wood for the trees. It's too close. You're too in it. And 17 weeks ago, 15 weeks ago, even 8 weeks ago, there was too much going on for people to have the capacity for the next level conversation. That's a blanket statement. I'm going to reverse on that. For some people to have the capacity for, because if you're employed as a strategic thinker, project manager, that's your job, to be ahead of the game and be thinking strategically. But when you're on the ground going, oh my God, and just looking at what's happening in the world, and it's just like, oh, it's like the screen picture. You haven't got the capacity to even be contemplating. And what I'm noticing now with the conversations, I've had several conversations this week with organizations saying, actually, we would like to deliver some training. We want the training online. Can you do it by Zoom and this and that? And I don't use Zoom for corporate trainings. I use an enterprise level platform. But I'm saying, yes, all of this can be delivered online. And I've been delivering it online for 15 years. So it's tried and it's tested. I'm not just trying to shove what I was doing offline online, and those conversations are now starting.
You've got the experience. That's awesome. And I guess sort of at the beginning of sort of the 17 weeks, it was kind of, your business was in a similar place to most of ours, that it all sort of went into a bit of a business lockdown in many ways, because nobody was really able to think about doing anything other than fight the fires, right?
And I had events planned at my local, I use the Jury's Inn hotel, free plug for them. So I used the hotel at the top of my road, and I had events planned, lined up. I had a family weirdly flying in from Australia to my 3-day photo reading workshop. And at the point where all this was happening, they had said to me, we're still coming. We've been so looking forward to it for weeks, months, whatever. We're coming. And then they spoke to the authorities, and the authorities said, you're free to travel.
Yeah, you might not get back in again.
You come back. And actually, if they had traveled, I think they just would have hit the cusp where they might just have been able to make it back out again. But we're like, look, the risk is too great. Let's not do this. And then I just ran it as a live stream for them. So they're at home in Australia, the whole family, and I'm here. So even that, it was just, then you're getting more creative from the client perspective. But yeah, so it's been interesting. But yeah, of course, all of the events that were due to happen in person, those were just gone in the blink of an eye.
Yeah, I think a few of us were like, okay, cancel, okay, and the emails, cancel, postpone, okay. And in the end, I don't know about you, I was emailing people saying, let's postpone.
And we still don't know, because they are still coming. They still say, no, we're still coming. The flights are on hold, etc. But even I, at the moment, cannot say how long are we postponing for. Because in previous I was going, it'll probably be fine by September. But we're now hitting to the end of July, and we've now got this whole thing coming in with the masks. So clearly we're not, the perception is we're nowhere out of the woods yet. So even the postponing, I'm now seeing many organizations coming in with 2021 as the dates where they're now thinking about launch. And I saw one organization that I've been speaking to about potentially doing some online corporate training for their staff and doing some team building events, and what I call the lunch and learn events, is they're saying they do not anticipate being back in the physical space until 2022. Now, that might be a little bit extreme, but that was what they said in this moment, just based on how they're assessing everything.
And this is like bringing on to a point, one of the comments in the question, or one of the comments in the chat is from Emily. Let me bring that up. So Emily is just saying, I think what a lot of people are saying, that she's really enjoying working from home, mainly due to no commute. I think a lot of us are enjoying not having to commute. My office was in the city, so I was on that sort of central line commute, but missing this interacting with the colleagues. This is the whole like in-person and networking and events and venues and all of it. The online's amazing, but it doesn't recreate that sort of in-person energy transfer.
Now, this is an interesting one, and thank you so much for the question, Emily. I have spoken to people who have said there are colleagues that they've worked with. One woman said there's somebody she's worked with for about 3.5 years. And actually, I met her at the top of my street. We were just chatting in our respective social distancing bubbles, of course. And she said, I know this woman better now in the last few weeks than the whole of the 5 years, because they've been having Zoom catch-ups, they've been speaking on the phone, they've been sharing things about, life, how has it been, the stresses, the strains, the challenges, etc. So they've come out of lockdown with a much deeper and richer relationship than they had when they were working together for all of those years. When we come to the energetic side, I'm one of those weird people who actually doesn't totally agree with that. And the reason I don't is that I have run events, and I've split tested it. I've run in-person events, and then when I was starting to roll out the webinars, I invited the same people who'd been on the in-person event to come to the online event. The feedback that I got, if I put it side by side, it's identical. And the first thing everyone said is, I really thought I'd miss being in the room. They missed the hugs and they missed my Marks and Spencer's cakes and treats, etc. But the energy and the dynamic and the connection, exactly the same. So I already know that you can get, and the connection is such with some of the groups that I've been running for the last 7 years. I have someone who I think we're probably 6 years into it now. The connection with the group was so strong. She got on a plane from Boston and flew to London for the weekend. Wow. Just to have, tea with everyone. That's real connection. You do not do a transatlantic flight on a whim. And she's now the expectation's been set, which is, when are you coming? So she's come every year. I think it's for the last 6 years. And I remember I arrived at the restaurant. I arrived a little bit later than everyone else, and I walked and I said, I've got a party who are here. And he said, is that the group of old, his words to me were, is that the group of old friends, the reunion? That was the first time they had met. But to just watch them, they'd only been there 10, 15 minutes. They were like a group of old friends. And that's exactly what there's a guy called Matt at the Jury's Inn. He says exactly the same. He says, Marilyn, your groups are wonderful, because they often sit in the main lobby before we unlock the room. And often they're there early. And there was one point, Matt and I said, Matt, this is a Kodak moment. I said, this group of people before 5 minutes ago, they had never met. They've only interacted online, and it was the first time I brought the membership group together, and Matt and I were just standing and watching this group of old friends who had such deep connection. And when I told him they didn't know each other apart from online, he's like, your groups are always beautiful. And
so what we're taking away from this then is it's possible to build these deep connections online while we're all sort of still in this weird transitionary place, and then when we all connect and meet up, it will be like we're a group of old friends.
And one of the things I say to organizations, if they haven't already been doing it, and most of them cottoned onto this several weeks ago, if they haven't already been doing it, do things also on Zoom that have got nothing to do with work. Seriously, I've been Zoom partying in the Caribbean, live streaming from Barbados, as a soca night.
Wow.
So, there's a quiz night that our local mayor is running every single Friday. There are just have socials, whereas organizations have dress down Friday and tea and biscuits and all the rest of it. Everyone get your favorite snack, you rock up to Zoom, you just have a social. Hey, how you doing? Oh, my kids, be quiet over there. Have you seen my cats? All of that, bringing the fun factor into it so that you still get that human dynamic and you get that sense of human connection. And it's not all just about work. And also for the people who are old school, don't forget I'm pointing there because that's where my telephone is. Go old school as well. There are so many things you can do. And also with my local Chamber of Commerce, I went on a net walk. I called it the net walking, as in walking. I went on a networking event last week. where we were in group pods of 6. And there were, I was one of the kind of question facilitators. Our leader was the manager from the local Metro Bank. And so our walk was through Cassiobury Park. And we're just walking and networking. So, hey, who are you? What's your business? What do you do? So there is now scope, I believe, given, with all the bubbles and the social interaction, we can actually start now transitioning back out of this and being more creative. I would say creativity is the key.
You've got Emily is saying, so she always makes people show their dogs or their cats. I think this is the thing. And the other thing I was going to say is quite a lot of people seem to have got into gardening. So is the whole sort of sharing the progress of the plants, because obviously plants take time. And the big thing I keep saying to people is nature is such an amazing teacher that there is nothing but a seed for weeks. And then suddenly there's leaves. And then there's something that you can put on your plate and eat. It's unbelievable. But yeah, just sharing in all of that, I think it makes everybody more human, doesn't it? Because we can't just rely on what we've always relied on.
Definitely. And the whole thing, one of my favorite memes is there's a picture of a dog basically sitting there saying, I am the glue that holds her whole organization together, because whenever I show up, the crowd goes wild. It's that sort of thing. And I shared that probably 15 weeks ago. It's brilliant, but it's so true. It is so true. And I think there's a line to be drawn between professionalism. So when it's a full-on meeting, have the meeting. This is not the time to be sat, petting your dog and your cat, etc. But outside of that, to come back to that human connection thing, I think that's more than valid. I don't know if you remember that video that went viral probably a couple of years ago now, where the guy was doing the news report and the door bursts open and his child comes in. That was viral because it was that thing that you're saying, that there was a humanness about that. That yes, you actually have a life and a family and things go on and things go wrong, allegedly, but that made him an online.
How he responded to it, it was the BBC. And it was almost like that's kind of given us now permission to have family members walk behind the back, go to the fridge, the phone to ring, the doorbell with I don't know about your neighbours, but one of my neighbours seems to have the Amazon delivery every single day. And some days the delivery guy comes, and I think it's the same guy, he comes down the street with his music blaring, and I'm like, I'm doing a show here. My neighbour, but they tell me they can't hear it on the microphone, which is great.
My neighbour's got the knack of always appearing or ringing. Now that my phone is always switched off now, people just know my phone's, if I'm doing something recording, my phone's off. But she has the knack of ringing the doorbell the minute I go live. And there are times where now I've sort of briefed her and said, look, number one, refrain, just email me. Because normally it's like, oh, can I use your recycling bin? Yes, of course you can use my recycling bin. But she's got the knack of ringing. But previously she'd ring and I wouldn't answer, of course, because I'm streaming. Then she'd knock again and I'm like, excuse me a moment.
She can't hear me. I'm just going to knock louder. It's like, okay, I'm ignoring you for a reason.
That's part of online life. But I minimize those distractions as much as I possibly can with phones off, email off, and all that. And that's one of the things I'd say to people if you're just getting into this. Turn off everything that bings and bongs and makes a noise as much as you possibly can. And also the thing that makes me giggle to this day is somebody's deep animated conversation and they're completely muted. So, I think the phrase many of us have heard most often is, you're muted, can you unmute?
I do this, I'm like, we can't hear you. Let us know in the comments, like, if any of this is resonating with you. For the last 17 weeks, you've kind of had these things, and also love to hear any stories where you've kind of felt more connected to people who you sort of thought were, I don't know, you'd weirdly put them on a pedestal. Like, we have this way of making people like godlike in our life. But then when we see the doorbell rings, or say the tech fails, or they're like, as it freezes, it really makes our brain, what is going on in our brain that we do this, that literally some kind of almost failure helps us to connect better with people. Is this a phenomenon? Is this something I'm making up in my own head?
Well, one of my hashtags, and I've been using it, I don't know, I'll have to check Facebook, probably about 5 years now, is hashtag being human. Because I think many of well, I know a lot of the celebrities have embraced this whole pandemic, and we're now almost part of their lives. So I know that Kerry Washington, for example, does yoga lessons in her garden. There's a guy called D Nice who holds Instagram. He's a DJ. He holds Instagram parties, and I was at one on Sunday, and he's like, "Anyway, guys, I'm limited today because it's Disney movie day." And then his daughter wanders up and says, "Yeah, we're watching Barbie," you know, and all this sort of stuff. And then he popped back in the afternoon, and he says, "Right, she's let me do it. The boss has let me do another little set, but we've got a pool party in half an hour." And then she comes on at the end, and he gives the mic to his daughter, and they do a little dialogue together. So he has gone from probably the DJ up in the booth who everybody is looking up to and, oh my god, that's great, but he's kind of untouchable, to we have now met his daughter and we know she's in charge, and he said, "Hey guys, I'm going to be off screen for a bit, I'm still with you, but I'm heating up my daughter's lunch." You know, we had those conversations on Sunday, and so that's just been really lovely. You get to see another side of people, and we're almost now in conversation, rather than kind of almost like a them and us. And the same in the context of work. You know, the manager in the corner office is sometimes unapproachable unless you've got your appointment, and now you're seeing, oh my god, you know, because I know people are doing the thing where they're going like this. "Oh look, oh that's a nice sofa. Oh, I wonder what that book," you know, because you're now seeing unless they're at green screening.
We've already had somebody comment about how orderly your books are on the shelf. So yes, people are looking at these things.
And it's not, people have said, is it green screen? It's like, no, actually it's all real. So it is, but of course I'm a photo reading instructor, I love books, but you know, so you're seeing a glimpse into the way that people live and their homes, and you'd never normally get that unless you're Richard Branson. You invite everyone to Necker Island every year for a party. You don't seeing another side of people, I think, now.
So what would you say is your second biggest sort of life lesson for yourself, for your business, for your life, that you've had that's really made you kind of go, oh, over the last 17 weeks?
I'd say it's something that I've put into practice, and it's going to be a word, it's consistency. I knew, in terms of my health and well-being, etc., I knew at the start of lockdown that one of two things was likely to happen in terms of health and fitness, etc. I was either going to be fatter or fitter, if I'm just going to put it down into a nutshell. And so I thought a decision's got to be made here, particularly when you notice the implications of lockdown. Of course, they did say you could go out for an hour of exercise, but now when you know, you really shouldn't go out unless it's absolutely necessary. Just the going for a walk, popping here, going here, commuting, all of that takes physical exertion, but we don't really notice. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to now be extremely consistent about health and fitness and well-being. And so I made that decision in March as well, that at least 5 days a week, I'm going to have to do something in terms of physical movement, exercise, etc. And I've managed to keep that up and do it every single week for the last.
And what do you do? Because your arms are amazing. I'm having arm envy. I'm like, oh, do you do push-ups? Do you what is your
seriously, I keep it very simple, and push-ups is one of the things that I do. Thankfully, when we went into lockdown, of course, one of the first emails that I got, I do ballet once a week. Of course, we got the email saying, unfortunately, we have to cancel the ballet classes. I emailed back immediately, and I have no idea if what my email had a bearing on their decision, but I immediately emailed back and I says, is there any chance you could adapt the class and do it online? 2 weeks later, we get an email with like 10 different classes online: ballet, tap, jazz, contemporary, street dance, you name it, stretch class. And so also I've been signing up for those every single week. So I did my Thursday ballet class was last night. We've been doing a Sunday stretch class. But I went back to the approach that I used probably 25 years ago when I was grossly overweight. I was in the kind of morbidly obese, even though I didn't look it. I think I'm one of those visceral fat people where it's all a lot of it is on the inside, but I was on the chart where I was dangerously obese. I was also chronically tired, no energy, all the rest of it. I hated the way I looked because I went completely bald and I lost all my hair and my skin was in a terrible state. So I actually didn't want to be going out to the gym, etc. And so I took the approach that I was just going to do little and often. And I started exercising back though. In those days, I used to watch a lot of soap operas, and I started exercising in the ad break. So the first ad break, I would do my stretches and my warm-ups, and I'd sit down and watch the rest of Corrie or EastEnders. The next break, or, you know, break between shows, I'd get up and I'd do some sit-ups. Then I'd sit and watch the next show. Then at the next break, I'd get up and I'd do some press-up. And basically, I did that for about a year and a half.
Wow.
And I didn't really notice a difference. And I was out in town. I met a guy called Bob. He said, "Whoa, have you been working out?" And that is the moment where I thought, oh my goodness, my approach is working, because this guy thinks I've been spending a load of time in the gym and I didn't have a gym membership. So I've taken exactly the same approach that I took 25 years ago now, because I'll be honest, it was compounded by the fact that I was off in December, and I was on an all-inclusive retreat in January, you know, 5 times a day, eating 5-course meals. It does take its toll. Then I was off most of February, and my plan was, okay, we get back into gear in March. And then March came. I'm like, oh. So my biggest thing has been the power of consistency in terms of keeping yourself sane and keeping yourself focused on where you want to go. So even when all the madness is happening around you, you have some sort of sense of balance and grounding.
That's such a great tip. And it's funny, one of our comments that's just come in is that something that I teach people is how to do something every day for 8 minutes. So it's similar to what you're saying in between the ad breaks, which is probably about 4 minutes, but it's just doing something, and it doesn't have to be a lot. This HIIT and the fact that we know that we can do things for a short period of time, really high intensity, and it has an impact. And yeah, more praise for the arms. So what would you say then is your biggest tip? What's kind of kept you sane? What's one thing that you always say to everybody is something that we should just be doing to get through situations like this? Because these, obviously this is a big compounded global one, but these sorts of situations do happen, and life is about adversity and the roller coaster. So what's your overarching life message or tip that you would pass on to anybody?
This one's going to seem ironic given the state of the world and how the COVID-19 presents itself and the whole thing with the face masks at the moment. My tip would be to breathe. And I know it sounds really simple, and of course if you're watching this you are breathing, but breathing, I would say, with purpose and clarity and intention. So my favorite thing is the ha breath, where you breathe in through the nose and you breathe out through the mouth, and you make a ha sound. That's why it's called the ha breath. And I've always said to people, the ha breath, I'm sure, has saved many lives, because there'll be something that happens where I'm just about to hit the roof and fly off the handle, and then I'm like, and just in the time it takes me to do that, it gives me a break state. Everything just calms down, because we're already pre-programmed in a way. If I go to, let's say, my hypnotherapy style training or anything to do with martial arts or relaxation, it normally starts with the breath. Take a deep breath in and inhale. So we're already pre-programmed to understand, and we physiologically react to that anyway. But just taking a breath and taking a moment, counting to at least 5, but 10 if you can manage it. And then from there, you decide, what's my next move? What's my next step? Because that little break state is going to take the heat out of things. If we come back to where we started this conversation with the brain, it's going to help to reoxygenate the brain. Because one of the things that what happens when people are under stress and under pressure, oh my God, what am I going to do? They start shallow breathing. So, level of oxygen floating around the body starts to decrease a bit. Then they kind of almost go, oh my God, and they start closing in on themselves. So the thing I say is, you also breathe and you expand your awareness so that you're hitting into what you call the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the body's natural relaxation response, versus the sympathetic, which is, oh my God, and the fight or flight mode. So relaxing the breathing, expanded awareness, and then you ask yourself whatever is going to be a productive, useful question. And the question might be, what is my next move? What is my next step? Where do I go from here? how do I best handle this? What's the next thing it will be a good idea for me to do? And sometimes the next thing will be a good idea for you to do if you're still in that confined space where the whole family are in lockdown or working from home and the kids are homeschooling. Sometimes your next move is just to excuse yourself for 5 minutes. And then you just go out and breathe some more. But seriously, the whole thing about getting the oxygen flowing, giving a good set of instructions to the brain, it is so powerful. It sounds very simple, but when you do it with the counting, I've had clients come back and go, oh my goodness, I did the thing that you said about the breathing and the expanded awareness. There's a few other bits that we put into it, which come from, step 1 of the photo reading, because it's all about relaxation. But when they do that, people are, it just feels like they feel their state changing. They feel their brain and their mind expanding and opening up. And then when you have that, because part of it is about you're getting left and right brain integration, which means the logic and the creativity is now coming together. And that's the powerhouse right there. That is the thing that allows you to think more clearly. It is the thing that allows you to be creative. It is the thing that the part of the mind and the brain that allows you to strategize and plan. And that is then leads into that sense of sanity. Control is a little bit of a misnomer, because I think many of us have realized how little control we actually have. And you were talking about Mother Nature earlier. We live with the fact that we cannot control Mother Nature, the world, etc. So control isn't quite the right word. However, it just to give a sense, it's that thing that gives you some sense of control about how your thoughts, how you're feeling, and then you can make a clearer decision about what you do next. So breathe and all the components that sit underneath.
Amazing. That's the top tip. So guys, as I said to you, Marilyn is like an ocean of information. So give her a follow on social. She's going to post some links to some of her stuff because she's got loads of things on YouTube as well. So Marilyn, where is the best place for us to start to find you?
Best place to find me, I guess, is the website, and I'll say it and then I'll spell it because it's an unusual spelling. It's TranceFormations.com. So trance is www.trance, F for Freddie, so FORMATIONS, TM as in trademark, so www.transformationstm.com. On social media, /Marilyn Devonish, and Marilyn is MARILYN, and Devonish is DEV for Victor, ONISH. The only place where that's different is Instagram, and it's the Neuro Success Coach, but / Marilyn Devonish on social media. And I am easy enough to find.
Amazing. Well, Marilyn's going to put all the links so that makes your life even easier. So thank you so much for your time and wisdom and insight today. It's been awesome to have this conversation with you.
Oh, thank you so much. Always a pleasure. Really enjoyed it. And congratulations. Again, you were so consistent with this show, showing up every week. So congratulations on that. Well done. And it just looks fantastic. Really professional. I love it.
Thank you. So the show is for the community, but it's also for me. So it's my consistency. So guys, 2 things to say to you before we head into the weekend. If you're watching this live, if you're watching on replay, might not make any sense. Next week, Tuesday, we will be back at 11 o'clock, and fingers crossed, I'm going to have a special guest with me while we talk about your top time management question. And this special guest is sort of an expert in something called archetypes, which is really interesting. We're going to talk about your archetype when it comes to time management. And then Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday is going to be our grand finale, episode 75, to close out the show before we take a month off for the summer and come back in September. And in September, hopefully we'll be able to get Marilyn back again to talk about what she calls photo reading, but I think it's way more than that. I think it's about basically Marilyn teaching us how to reprogram our brain in order to become faster. So this is definitely going to be something that you'll want to hear about. And in September, Q4, we're going to schedule in that talk to find out a little bit more about that. But until next time, stay safe, stay well, and keep washing your hands.